Hello, this is Talking Europe on France 24. I'm Catherine Nicholson, once again at the European Parliament in Brussels. Now, today on the programme, we're picking through that unprecedented €750 billion economic recovery plan that European national leaders agreed upon back in July. Now, members of the European Parliament get to have their say before it goes into action, of course, including the three people joining me here in the studio today. We have with us François-Xavier Bellamy, who is a leader of the French delegation for the European People's Party. Hello there.
Hello.
Hi. We also have with us Malin Björk, who's Swedish MEP from the European United Left Group. Hi there. And across from you, we have Fabio Massimo Castaldo, MEP from Italy's Five Star Movement and one of the vice presidents of the European Parliament. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So we're going to get stuck in. A couple of key points to remind our viewers about this historic recovery plan. It's a recovery fund worth €750 billion in total. Now, 390 of that to be given out to the member states in different amounts as grants that don't have to be paid back. The rest would be loans. And money will be raised for this from jointly borrowing among all the EU member states on the international markets, which is in itself a big deal for the European Union. Let's start off with this idea of borrowing, essentially borrowing from future Europeans, really, who are going to be paying this money back, paying back today's crisis. François-Xavier Bellamy, I'll come to you first, because you're reporting back for one of the Parliament committees on this plan. It's not clear how this money is going to be paid back. Is this really a great idea? Is it fair on future Europeans?
I don't think so. And for me, the biggest problem of this recovery plan is that there was an agreement on the fact to borrow some money to finance it, but no agreement on the repayment scheme. Mm-hmm. So that means that we are, in fact, only transferring the problems we couldn't face today to the people that will be after us in charge of repaying for the debt we are creating. Mm-hmm. This debt is totally new, and everybody saw it as a progress because it was a new European debt. In fact, I don't think that we can call a progress the fact to spend money you don't have even to repay for the future generations. This is the reason why I try to ensure in the report we drafted during the summer that at least this money will be used only in investments that can produce a prosperity for tomorrow, so as to offer our children a way to repay the debt we will have created.
Malin Björk.
Well, I'm from Sweden. We're a non-Euro country, and actually the way that this has been, the architecture of this, brings us into the economic governance in a way that we actually said no to in a referendum. So from our side, we actually think are very critical towards this construction. We also think that the fact of not having a plan for the recovery of this money, but also the fact that the criteria to spend the money is not future-proof in terms of climate and rule of law and democracy, which are like the issues that we have to face in the future. So there are several problems with this. One being, of course, future generations, and that this is type of economic governance that I disapprove, our party disapprove of, but also that it's not future-proof in terms of environment and democracy.
And Fabio Massimo Castaldo.
Well, in fact, if you have another view on this result, we can say that there are some important lights, but still also some shadows. What is the main news inside this plan is the fact that finally, to face common threats as this pandemic that was touching us in a symmetric way, all Europe, we are also finally taking a real sharing of the risk. And this is, of course, a truly important pillar that it can also lead us to a real European, more federal budget. But on the other hand, I can share the concerns of those who really wanted much more bravery on the reshaping the system of the own resources. I think that just the idea to introduce a small plastic tax without also putting together a financial transaction tax and also a much more important the system of reform of the ETS, that means the emission of carbon, it's not really sustainable in the long term. And I would like to call, and the European Parliament must take a strong stance in the regard of the Council, asking them to go much more further, to be much more ambitious to ensure the sustainability of the system. Then also, I think that among the main objectives to realize, we should put a longer list, not just the digital reform and the digital revolution of the continent, not just the transition towards renewables, but also more investment for public health, for social issues and challenge, and also, of course, for research and education.
I think I have a very different position in terms of the EU own resources, which is actually EU taxes. I think it's a bad idea in the sense that it's actually taxes that are being withheld from national budgets. But money that could have been spent on welfare, healthcare, where we know there are great needs, especially this pandemic has shown how much we have needs there. And in terms of introducing EU taxes, it's just like not a miracle to pay for the EU budget. It is money that could and should be spent nationally on very important welfare services. And I think this has to be kept in mind also. So I know there's a majority in the parliament to call for more money. There always is a majority for that. But it's something that I think we should be very critical of.
François-Xavier Bellamy, where do you stand on the issue of own resources or new taxes? They really are taxes, aren't they?
First of all, I share your point. There is a democratic problem because, in fact, this would put us into the question of where is democratic responsibility today. And I don't think that it is a good idea to think of a federal budget, for example, as there is no democratic accountability in the European institutions, no direct accountability. Europe is a wonderful adventure. The fact that our countries can build together an alliance to share strategies and policies on very vital domains. We shouldn't take it for a new super state, and this is an illusion that would create a big fragility for Europe as a whole. Then on own resources, I always find the debate quite strange because we are talking of own resources as a whole, as if we would speak of are you in favor or against taxes? The question is some can be useful and just and fair, and others can be destroying. For example, for the carbon inclusion mechanism, I think this we should work on because it's not only a way to produce some money for public action, but it's also a way to reshape globalization in a more ecological sense. And I think that it is a time the time where we should work on this kind of issues.
Is it possible, though, to have some aspects of joint work in Europe, of federalism in a way, such as joint borrowing on this scale, and then to pull back on federalist ideas at the same time? Hasn't Europe kind of taken a step down a federalist path
Definitely.
with this whole plan?
Definitely, and I think that is not a good path. But we decided as a country to be outside the euro, and in terms of showing solidarity and between countries, we have to find other ways, especially. But I do think there is an issue and a debate to have between euro countries on how to, because you no longer have all the instruments in your hands when you're a member of the euro country. So you need to have others then.
And in fact, just this crisis showed us that without a real coordination and a strong coordination on fiscal policies and more tools on our hands to face the global challenge, in this moment, we cannot think of a real sustainable monetary union in the long term. That's also why this reshaping of the own resources should also tackle the issue, for example, of tax havens. We know very well that inside the European Union, in this moment, we have some states that can be considered and compliant with the definition on tax havens. If we will not tackle this issue, also thinking about the introduction of the CCCTB or a kind of, as first step, single market levy to try to adapt and to put again the state in a system of a fair cooperation, a loyal one among us, of course, this will undermine the unity of the European Union, and we will not be able to be a real global player at the scale we really need, of course, to be part of this new wave that should reshape, as you were saying before, the globalization in a more fair and sustainable way, exactly for the good and the interest of the next generation.
We've just got a very short amount of time, but I'd like to just bring in the fact that this is all tied in with the next European Union budget, which is due to come in next year for 7 years. Funding plans have been slashed on some other areas in order to reallocate money to the COVID recovery, including fund for helping poor economies transition away from carbon-emitting industry. That's cut by 2/3. The Science Research Programme. The European Parliament does get a veto on the European Union budget. I'd just like to ask you all in turn, do you believe that the European Parliament could veto this budget?
I think yes. We saw that the agreement that intervened in the Council was very badly welcomed in this Parliament, and there was a strong resolution this summer voted here. I think that if we are not ready to vote against the budget, then we will be out of the all negotiations. So we need to be ready.
I think the European Parliament should use its powers for the good reasons. The only two good reasons I see is that we should have had much more climate-proof policies, and we should have criteria that would be much, much more strict. We should also have had an absolute criteria on respect for rule of law and democracy, which we do not have in this agreement. I think it's a disaster for us, but also for the future. So those two things. So not for the bad reasons, but for those two reasons, we have enormous issues of equality and justice that we have to face. So this is not, that would be the main reasons.
I truly believe that we have all the rights to raise the issue of using this power of veto to improve the deal, because basically the European Parliament so far was the only institution not really involved in the reduction and the drafting of the plan, and not even on the implementation on the mechanism. We need to have a more structural control, of course, on the future resilience facility structure, and also, of course, in the new budget, we want to have that much more ambitious and to have a real commitment on the rule of law. If the Council is not ready to deliver, they cannot get for free our consent, and so we are ready to play our role of a real representative of the citizens.
And a very good point that we raised before the programme is that a majority of the members of the European Parliament are not actually members of the parties that are governing the member states. So there is a real opposition here, so perhaps a real threat from the European Parliament this time around. We will have to leave it there, though. Thank you all very much for this discussion. Fabio Massimo Castaldo, Malin Björk and François-Xavier Bellamy. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for watching. Hope to see you very soon for another edition of Talking Europe on France 24.
The world is ever-changing. The news doesn't wait. That's why at France 24, we'll always be there to help make sense of world events. For the best international coverage, 24 hours a day, no matter what. France 24, with you everywhere, all the time. Liberté, égalité, actualité.